Baraka's farmland became generous, however stressful, similar to life. Fertile soil, but its handies yielded to the sweat of people who knew the way to work it. Whilst Amara arrived, there were no speeches, no warm welcomes. The wood gate creaked shut at the back of her with a sluggish, almost solemn groan, as if announcing, "Right here, a new time begins." But neither she nor Kato knew what to do with that time. The house became easy but smooth. The odor of toasted flour and firewood, nevertheless burning in the range, gave off an ordinary sense of comfort. Amara, used to being dealt with contempt, hesitated to completely step interior. She lingered inside the doorway, her feet nonetheless outside, like a person unsure whether or not they are allowed to go into a place they have got in no way been invited. Kato didn't insist. He surely pointed without a word to a side room. The door changed into barely ajar. Internal, a wooden bed covered with a dwindled blue sheet, a picture of clean water, and a straw mat folded inside the corner. As Amara entered with brief, dragging steps, she ran her arms alongside the bed body, scanning the room as though trying to find traps. There had been no shouts, no orders, just silence. In the one's first days, the silence among them turned into like a third inhabitant of the residence. Amara could wake early, wash the porch, sweep the yard, gather firewood, and do what she had always carried out. Work without asking, obey without understanding. Kato, for his element, left for the fields earlier than the sun turned into fully up, and Handis returned when the tree's shadows stretched long throughout the ground. They infrequently checked out every other. She didn't speak, neither did he, but there have been gestures. One past due afternoon, Kato left a clean loaf of bread at the desk. It was nevertheless warm. He didn't say it became for her, but he left the room, and minutes later, Amara picked up a piece with trembling fingers. She ate slowly, like someone afraid it might be taken return. The next day, the bread changed into there once more. One morning, while Kato became feeding the goats, he saw Amara on her knees within the backyard, scrubbing a pot till it shone. The sun hit her face, and he or she squinted, but didn't stop. That scene, so normal, stirred something in him because she wasn't simply cleaning a pot. She changed into reclaiming her dignity one scrub at a time. That nighttime, he positioned an additional blanket in her room. The weather was cooling, and she had a light cough. She observed but said not anything. She honestly pulled the blanket up to her chin, and for the second one time fell asleep without tears. Over time, Amara began to care for the residents with extra interest. The home windows had been constantly open, the clothes covered up well at the rope, and even wildflowers started to appear in clay pots at the porch. Small touches nobody teaches signs that a female is turning a refuge into a domestic. Kato observed a whole lot, but stated nothing. He nevertheless left early, lower back overdue, but now his gaze had softened. One day, strolling back from the sphere, he noticed the gate had been repaired. The timber were sanded, tied with sparkling rope. Amara changed into turned away, tending to the lawn. He stood there for a moment simply looking, then went inner without a word. From time to time at dinner, the best sound became the spoon tapping towards the plate. Other times, no longer even that. However, on one of these silent nights, Amara murmured thanks for the room so softly it almost were given lost within the wind outdoor. However, Kato heard. He didn't reply with phrases. He got up, took a new candle, and placed it by her bedside, a small gesture, however it said, "I heard you. I see you." The silence among them wasn't empty. It turned into a procedure, a bridge. Slowly, Amara stopped strolling with hunched shoulders. She started to appearance in advance, although she still didn't recognize in which she was going. And Kato, who had by no means acknowledged the way to take care of anybody, was beginning to research that to welcome a person isn't about quite phrases or promises. It's approximately commencing the door and not filing it as soon as the other steps in. There on that small farm, lost between the brush and the whispers of the village, souls were gaining knowledge of what it's supposed to start once more, although they didn't but recognize what to call it. Time inside the village wasn't measured by means of clocks, however by glances. And it Handis took Amara, lifting her hand a bit higher for the whispers to begin. Curious, sharp, restless, the older women, seated on the wooden benches around the square, commenced weaving words with the same care they used to line up their threads. Once the words started flowing, the questions got here, laced with poison disguised as laughter. "Did you see? He took the lady into his residence," asked the chattiest of them. "Mama Jaya," stated some other, a raspy-voiced woman who never allowed unmarried element cross ignored. "I noticed." "Sure, proper there in the front of anybody, like buying a bird on the market," responded some other, shaking her head. "Word is, it wasn't out of pity. They are saying antique Kato got tired of being alone and acquired himself a spouse." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. The laughter became quiet, like remote thunder earlier than the storm of malice. However, no one dared say these items to his face. Kato became respected, however feared. He became by no means one for clean smiles or small talk at the market. Always walked with a straw hat pulled low over his eyes, and when he spoke, every phrase regarded heavier than his very own frame. That's why the whispers stayed at the rims, inside the corners of houses, on the seamstresses' benches, in riverside chatter among hundreds of laundry. Amara on her quit stated not anything, however she felt it. She knew. She stuck fragments, noticed the sideways glances and twisted smiles. Nevertheless, she saved washing, sweeping, harvesting. She didn't need to be visible, but she didn't need to disappear both. She existed in between, caught between a past that also harmed and a future that still worried her. It became on one of these calm mornings that Kato, upon locating the corral fence broken, asked the nearest neighbor Mzuri for assist. As they repaired the wood, they overheard a lady in the distance, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "They are saying he even serves the maid coffee now, maid or spouse." Hard to inform. Kato looked up but said nothing. He actually hammered more difficult, as though the sound of the nails should drown out the insult. Hours later, while he got domestic, Amara was sweeping the porch. He approached slowly and said without looking directly at her, "They're saying, I bought a wife." Amara iced over. She didn't realize what to mention. Her cheeks flushed, no longer from pleasure, but from disgrace. The word sold, nevertheless stung. Even after the whole thing, Kato sighed, leaned in opposition to the doorframe, and said firmly, "I purchased her freedom." Not anything greater. There's been no overall performance in those words. No try and play hero, just the obvious truth. Uncooked like dry earth earlier in rain. You didn't owe all people an explanation, but for the primary time, he chose to offer one. Not for the people, for her. Amara gave a mild nod, and in that silent gesture, something aligned. It wasn't affection yet. It became appreciate solid ground. Inside the days that followed, the gossip persevered, and as traditional, it morphed. They said Kato gave Amara new clothes, that he permit her sleep in past due, that he wasn't the kind of man to elevate absolutely everyone. So that situation ought to have any other call. However, there was something curious. No one ever stated it to his face. One afternoon, Mama Jaya, the identical lady who had unfolded venomous whispers, tried to bring it up at the market at the same time as Kato was picking out okra seeds, taking good care of the woman. Kato? They say she's already walking the location," she said. Kato raised his eyes, stared on the lady for 2 lengthy, heavy seconds, and said without a doubt, "I take care of what's mine and the freedom of others." Mama Jaya dropped her gaze and by no means delivered it up in the front of him once more. Inside the village, silence should talk louder than any solution. And slowly the jokes withered like plants without water due to the fact there has been no scandal. No secret, only a woman who now walked with her head held excessive and a person who wasn't ashamed to shield what the world tried to forge apart. Time moved on. The season shifted. The rains came and went. The solar scorched and softened. Amara labored the land, tended the residents, and cared for the animals with devotion. Her palms, once bruised and calloused from struggling, now bore the energy of dignity. Kato labored beside her when he should, silent, constant, and ever watchful. Sooner or later, Amara determined a small yellow flower growing stubbornly a number of the weeds at the edge of the field. She knelt beside it, cupping it gently in her arms. "More to the wind than absolutely everyone," she whispered. "My mom preferred these." Kato got here and crouched beside her. Without speaking, he dug a tiny hole. Collectively, they planted the flower, watered it, and stepped lower back. It turned into a small act. However, it symbolized everything: resilience, care, and the quiet courage to begin over. From that day on, Amara started to hum even as washing dishes or tending the garden. Her voice, soft but certain, became a quiet melody that filled the farm. Kato listened from the space, in no way interrupting, because her songs had been evidence that her spirit had back fragile but unbroken. Then got here the day her stepmother Nafira reappeared. Thin, barefoot, and humbled through starvation, she stood earlier than the farm, arms empty, eyes downcast. Amara watched silently, her coronary heart steady. She fetched a simple plate of rice, beans, and roasted fish, and set it in front of Nafira. "You could sit down underneath the mango tree," Amara stated lightly. Nafira obeyed, consuming in silence. Every bite was a lesson of humility, a replicate reflecting her cruelty and Amara's mercy. And whilst Nafira whispered, "I don't understand why you don't hate me," Amara checked out her quietly and stated, "Due to the fact whoever contains hate has no space left to plant peace." Nafira left, humbled, a little less hungry, and a touch more aware of the burden of her personal alternatives. Life endured. Amara wore her blue get-dressed without worry, swept the porch, tended the animals, and laughed softly to herself while the wind danced via the bush. Kato walked beside her, no longer as a master, now not as a savior, but as an associate who had learned that love is proven through patience, recognize, and presence. One afternoon, as they had been collecting corn from the field, Amara stopped, hands protected in soil, and requested sincerely, "Do you still need to shop for me?" Kato set down his basket, met her gaze, and said, "No. Now I want to percentage lifestyles with you, but most effective in case you need to." Amara smiled, the kind of smile that healed years of ache. "I do," she stated. No tune played. No grand target audience watched. No jewels glittered inside the solar. However, there was peace, dignity, and preference. The things no person can take away. The farm, as soon as an area of exertions and silence, now echoed with the quiet rhythm of affection and acceptance true with. And underneath the antique mango tree, in which shadows shifted and birds sang softly, souls walked side by side, loose now not due to the fact they were given freedom, but because they had chosen it for themselves. Moral of the tale: true freedom can't be bought with gold or favors. It is earned through respect, braveness, and the kindness we display to others. Recovery comes now not from revenge, however from mercy. And sometimes the maximum effective love is quiet, patient, and steady, nurturing wounded hearts until they can bloom together.